Alright, what's going on YouTube? Gabriel White here, PGA Tour Driven, the movement towards improvement. I'm heading over to TPC Scottsdale, the Tour Academy, to get a lesson from my buddy Andy Patnow, who teaches over there. So last night I posted a question on Facebook if you guys had any video ideas, so we'll try to answer some questions you guys had about the golf swing as well. Let's head on over.
Look at them cactuses. What you looking at? Look at them cactuses.
Whistling decent, middle school, I was in on the 10 speed, Sugarloaf bloodline, pimping the red tail.
TPC Scottsdale. It's gunning through traffic here. As you can see, they got a lot of buildings up for, volunteers and workers, and they got stands everywhere, so I'll try to get some footage for you guys. Alright, here you go, boys. Here we are at TPC Scottsdale, and as you can see, they got stands and tents up everywhere around this place, still doing construction. We've got about 2 weeks till the Waste Management Open is here. Jamming down the range to meet Andy. As you can see, green grass, blue skies. Looks absolutely beautiful out here. Maybe they'll have some concessions, some food and drinks over here for the tournament. Here's one of the putting greens over here. Looks like a beautiful day over here. Here's a chipping green. This is where Andy teaches. The practice area reserved for Tour Academy only, guys. So pretty cool. Looks awesome out here. Alright, you guys, so here we are over here at TPC Scottsdale at the Tour Academy. We got Andy behind us and my buddy Jim. I'm gonna scroll over here. What's going on, boys?
Hey Gabe, what's going on? Let's teach Jim how to get a couple draws here and explain a little bit of ball flight stuff to him, and making sure he kind of understands a little bit of curvature and making sure he understands how to hit a proper draw as opposed to kind of a pull draw or any manipulation part of a draw a little bit. So Jim, why don't you talk about what we're kind of working on here real quick?
What we're doing here, we're doing some grid work. This is a really good drill to work on start lines and working on optically how we're looking at the target and getting a consistent starting direction with the ball and making sure you can get a consistent pattern somewhat developed in terms of your draws, developing the proper draw instead of a pull draw or deflected draw where it starts at the target and goes even more left. So I'm going to try to start these right, knowing that my face is open to the target, right? And then ensuring that my path is even more out so that I can produce the draw spin. So my face is closed to the path still.
Yeah, so if you guys can kind of see, I was just explaining to Jim here kind of how to hit a proper draw. So I got 3 different colors down here. Let's just say this one here is our target line. Let's say where the pin's kind of pointed at, like if we had sat here with the laser and we were here, and this is just shooting straight down towards the pin, let's just say in a simple sense, that's the target line, all right? Now, the orange one here, as I talk about Jim, is for his club face. So if you can kind of see in there, if I look at this blue stick here, the orange stick here is the club face, this blue stick here is kind of, let's say, his swing direction or what he's kind of feel like what he's doing at this path, right? So it's still inside our grid work here because I don't want him swinging too excessively in and out. But basically here, if for a draw, for a driver especially, you got to make sure that the swing direction here is a little point to the right, and our club face here is just inside that blue stick, or inside your target, or not your target, inside your pathwise, and ensure there's a tiny little draw. What most people think how to produce a draw here actually happens is that they want to try and get the swing direction maybe a little too far now, and they want to keep that club face point square at their target line. Unfortunately, what happens there is because the ball starts more towards the face, what we're kind of going to see here is that the ball is going to kind of start straight and then over curve left. That's kind of what you see on the telecast sometimes. They say point your club face at the target, swing out to the right, and that ball should come back to your target. When unfortunately, if it actually did happen like that, that ball would start straight and bend left a little bit. Okay, so we're looking for here, we're not looking for big draws here, we're just kind of looking for little tiny ones, which is why I'm making sure Jim gets the understand that he's just going to start this ball just a fraction a little to the right And really not trying to swing too far into out here, just kind of making sure you swing a little inside this little grid here. So again, you can kind of see that here, this is for a draw. And we can talk about a fade another day, but for the most part, he's just getting the understanding in terms of where his face should kind of point at and relatively where his path should kind of go to.
Jimbo Logic.
Jimbo Logic for the day.
Yeah.
How many nicknames do you have?
I have a lot.
Well, if you look here too, let's just look at his clothing. So he's got one on his shirt. If you look to the back of his hat here, he's also got another one right there. So he's got 2 names, people, on one outfit.
Unreal.
Yeah. Well, this isn't really a nickname. That's my name.
It's still Jim, not James.
Yeah. So.
Oh,
What?
Oh. So it's not your name. So if it's not your name, it's got to be a nickname to some degree.
I guess so.
Anyways.
Burn.
If you guys notice too, Jim also has crank on his driver, which means he doesn't really play golf. He usually just tries to hit it as far as possible.
I can play a little bit, but I'm more of a long ball whacker guy, but just working on.
He's getting more versatile.
Yeah, he's trying to,
I'm definitely getting a lot
This
better.
helps him out in the grid wise though too, Jim. Are you gonna stick here even on long drives, trying to aim really outside this grid a lot?
No.
Maybe you're trying to hit some huge curves with some different winds, but for the most part, this is still kind of the same thing.
Yeah, and it's just a lot different with long drive, you know, especially with these guys hitting up that much, hitting drivers with 3 degrees aloft. I mean, it's the premise is still the same, but in terms of how you would aim and swing and do that, it's just completely different. But this is great for practicing on course, kind of looking for me. It always seems like this stick is way too far out to the right, but you got to trust that that's in line with your target, because we don't have the luxury of having the target straight out in front of us. It's to the side of us. So if we get used to, especially as the club gets longer, we're staying further away from the ball, so that stick's going to look like it's even more out to the right. So when you initially start doing this drill, and even when I start doing it starting off, you start starting balls too far to the right because you're not trusting that you only need your face angle open, you know, a couple of degrees to start it out to the right. And initially people will start them way right, normally big pushes. So optically they kind of get used to trusting that they don't have to aim that far to the right to hit a draw, but we're still aiming just a touch right.
And I'll just say one thing, guys, there's a couple more things that I can dive into in more of a technical terms and talking about the angle of attack and how that kind of, you know, references in terms of how far right you have to aim or how you don't really have to aim too much. But in a rule of thumb, the more you hit up on it, the more that swing direction of yours has to be pointed a little bit more to the right of your target line in order to hit a draw. The less you hit down on it, relatively speaking, you don't have to sit there and bend that plane line so far to the right, and you can kind of trust that to be kind. So this is kind of more set up for kind of like a 10 to 15 yard draw for Jim, and let's see how well he does it.
All right.
The first time he ever did this, he nailed that orange or that middle stick right away. It was kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. If you do hit the stick, you know where your face was pointing for the most part.
The fun thing about this too, this becomes so less mechanical, and really just becomes more off feel and kind of what he has to kind of do, as opposed to trying to manipulate. It becomes a lot more simpler for Jim.
Oh,
One there.
cheer right out of the gates.
So where did that start? That felt really tight.
Yeah, it started
Like that.
Started within the grid.
So that, for me, it almost felt like I kind of pulled that, but it actually started, you know, relatively just a little bit to the right. So we're keeping our dispersion fairly tight instead of hitting more of a slinger draw. So that right there was what, maybe 3-4 yard draw,
A little more.
5 yards. I mean, it was.
Either way,
It's
drew.
different for people if you're not used to seeing your ball curve too much. You know, it could look like a straight ball to someone else. To their eye, optically, they look at it, it could look more like a draw. So for me, it felt like I pulled that, but that was actually pretty well good impact alignments for that draw shot there.
Well, by the time you see it, by the time you hit it and look up, the ball's already gone maybe 150 yards. So
Yeah.
for you to see where it starts off is harder than
Yeah.
us who are back here.
So this is a really good drill if you've got someone behind you and they can kind of see where your ball is starting. And the important thing is to set this drill up correctly, because if I'm setting this ball on this line, this is our target line, that's how we want to set it up, so it's going to optically look good. So if you get in a habit, especially if you're hitting irons, people will get their divots and then they start hitting over here, you know, and they're still trying to start to ride a stick and go to their target, they're going to be hitting big old pushes because they're going to look at it and they're like, God, I'm going to have to really push this, because you do, because you've got to stay on this target line to keep it relatively consistent. So that's why it's easy to do with the driver, because you don't have to worry about divots. But if you do take divots, make sure you work your way back and stay on the target line so you don't optically change where that stick is, so you're not manipulating how far you got to open up that face to hit shot to your target.
So Andy, let's say somebody doesn't have a string. Can they just put like an alignment rod where this green thing is and kind of get a reference point of a straight line so they could keep putting the ball up on that line that's in line with that alignment rod, and they can just work on keeping it right every time?
Yeah, what I tell someone that doesn't have a string, you can lay down an old golf club or one of your clubs. Let's just say if the target line was in front of there, just put the club relatively in front of your golf ball, just so you get the idea of where that ball is kind of launching over that way too, if you don't have a string. And then you just kind of work yourself way back, and obviously never get too close to your club. But you don't need a string for it. This kind of just makes it look a little more, you know, instructor-like, and it's easier for the concept of this team to kind of get that as well. Yeah, pretty simple, right? I mean, for the most part, if you get the ball to start right, you know, all you gotta do is kind of get the idea of how much you gotta swing right to get that golf ball to kind of come back. You're good to go with your 3-wood and driver.
Nice.
What is
All right, so another question we're going to answer that we got on Facebook. Last night I posted a question on Facebook. If you guys have any questions about the swing, let us know and we'll try to answer them. Another question we had to do with swing plane. So does this basically help swing plane too, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you can do a couple things in terms of swing plane. So guys, basically swing plane, it's just the angle that that middle part of that club face is kind of traveling on. And if you can kind of just keep it pretty simple for you guys at home, you can either travel from too steep of a plane, too shallow of a plane, or let's say relatively close to a pretty good plane. And usually what we kind of see for drivers and 3-woods is that we kind of want to hover between, let's say 50 and like around, you know, 45, or say maybe a little less than 45. But we got to make sure you understand here is that if we're coming in too steep, you know, with the driver, it's going to make it a little bit harder for us to kind of get there and curve that golf ball in the kind of way we want. And it's just going to kind of make some contact issues, I think, a little bit harder. So in an idea sense and kind of what we're going on here, Jim, let's set to a 3-wood shot right here. And guys, the reason why Jim can't hit his driver is because unfortunately there's some people practicing in back, and if he hits his driver, he's going to hit them.
Yeah,
so,
and I've already carried this 3-wood back to that deck, so it's only maybe 290.
Yeah, only
the other side.
it's only like 290.
Yeah,
No
so
big
I mean,
deal.
That's like my 3-iron
So
stinger.
yeah, the old trap draw.
So one thing I give a lot to my students if they're working on some swing shape or some swing plane, I like referring to more as swing shape, not even swing plane, because me just kind of golf nerding out, it's not really a swing plane. But in saying that, let's say if we're working on our swing shape, what I give to a lot of my students is I take an old shaft, I stick an alignment rod on in there, and I kind of want to set it up relative to an angle that they're trying to kind of mimic or trying to kind of get. So Jim, step to this little 3-wood real quick.
This little one.
Yep. So let's say if he was hitting an iron, I would be more happy with a swing plane that's kind of more vertical, let's say between, let's say 65 and 55. Relative for an iron, I think would be acceptable, but ideally kind of 60-ish, right? And as we start getting to a driver, what starts happening is that swing shape or swing plane starts flattening out a little bit. It starts becoming more towards a 45, right? So in saying that, what I do for Jim is that I would probably set up this golf club relatively close to that target line a little bit, but I'd set it up at an angle, not kind of crazy here, right? But something that you have to get a little bit of idea of swinging close. But what we don't want to start doing though is that we start putting this too close and he starts trying to flinch for it. I know ideally you can sit there and kind of swing underneath this as much as you want, but for the most part here is that if you have this at the right proper spot, what this is going to kind of reduce is that when Jim gets to the top, right, he's going to fight the urge to sit there and want to throw this left arm out and want to spin his shoulders too quick. He can't do that because if he does that, he's obviously going to come over the stick or hit it or do something. So I want you guys getting the idea here is that when you're putting this, don't put this too close to you. I want you guys getting a decent, a decent distance away, so Jimmy comes back down. Right, it's just kind of the thing we're working on, from a simple sense to kind of do that. But, I would say err towards extreme first. So Jim's a little bit more skilled and has been kind of doing it for a while. I think I could get this to you like what, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
it's been a while, so he can feel pretty comfy with this. So I'd say on the first rule of thumb, if you're going to kind of do this drill, get your target line down, maybe that golf club or whatever it is. Maybe take a little foot out. And then put that golf club out there at the angle that you kind of want to see. As you can kind of see, if you start coming back a little bit, it's going to be a little bit easier. I'm not really putting this for Jim, at his right shoulder, right? Because Jim, if I put that at your right shoulder, you're going to feel a little restricted.
Yeah.
And that's all fine and dandy, but for some players, especially for Jim, who's trying to hit it kind of far, and let's say he doesn't really have, it's pretty simple as that. He can't really sit there and swing that constricted. It's okay if it's a little bit above your right shoulder. Because even though this may not be mimicking exactly the swing shape that we want, it's going to give Jim the feel for kind of how to shallow, how to swing, and do that. Jim, let's hit one and kind of show him that real quick.
I thought I was just going to hit one. I only hit that good one. I wanted to stop on that one.
One and done?
Yeah.
All right, you guys want another draw here?
Yeah. So you just kind of outside his target line a little bit. He's getting the feel for the swing shape, making sure it's a little bit more around him, and for the most part, a little bit shallower. Another good one.
Ooh. And Andy, you can also check this with flight scope right here when you're saying I like to see him around a 45 to 55 with the driver.
Yeah. So if you kind of pop in here real quick, and let's give you guys I'll show you guys a little angle here. You know, a couple numbers here. Let's kind of get rid of a couple of these, but that number there that says V, that's a vertical swing plane. And if you can kind of see there, it says 48.3. All right, so that's pretty solid. You know, for the most part, I'm not going to touch that too much. Ideally, I like to see that maybe just a little bit more shallower, but for a 3-wood, I'd say that's okay.
That's actually really good because I've gotten to where I've been up to low 50s.
Yeah, and I've had amateur guys on this thing where this says like 61, and they're just hitting these kind of glancing driver shots, not going anywhere, and it's just kind of not the best thing. So for the most part, if you get the idea of, you know, a little bit shallower swing angle with this little golf stick, you'll be good to go.
Okay, cool. I think you're on a roll, Jim. I think you could just do this all day.
I know. Well, I've been hitting for a little bit. I'm kind of warmed up, but yeah, those were really good shots. And we played yesterday, and I was actually working draws on the golf course, and I was hitting some good shots.
Yeah, those were pure.
Yeah. So.
All right, you guys, we are done here late in the day. Andy had to clean up his part of the range: chairs, tent, table, computer, flight scope. So, what's the dealio, Andy? What's going on?
Circus is done today.
I know, it was a long day for you, huh?
Yeah, I've been out here since 8. Jeez, helped a PGA Tour member, a beginner golfer, 2 aspiring professionals, an aspiring practicer, and Gabe.
Yep, me.
By Jim, another aspiring professional, and one of our assistants here, Josh Pelta.
What up?
Josh is practicing for his PAT.
Nice. When's that coming up?
February sometime.
February,
Haven't
nice.
signed up yet.
Around here? In Phoenix or?
I think it's like Ken McDonald.
Okay.
Pelta, what'd you work on your swing today? Tell the camera.
Width,
Getting width in the swing?
knees, hip, arms, width.
Nice.
Yeah. Don't put that on TV.
Don't put that. We're putting it on. We're definitely putting that on.
Hip flexors.
All right, so late in the day, packing up here. This is how I record myself right here. Check this out, you guys. In the carts, we have 2 yardage books. Okay, TPC Scottsdale, stadium course, and obviously it'll give you guys the yardages, the holes, and stuff. I'm gonna steal these, and when they have the waste management open here next week, I'll send these out, and someone can follow along when they're on TV and they say hole 9 or something. You can see and maybe guess how far they have in or something. So leave a comment below if you guys want one of these things. I'll ship out a couple of them. That's all I can steal. So thanks for watching, you guys. Gabriel right here, PGA Tour, driven the movement towards improvement. Subscribe. Talk to you guys soon.